presentation is that you can watch it online on YouTube, and also you can watch with the same link. This will be recorded. And please keep in mind that you need to visit our website, EnglishSkillsOne.com, for further information and other activities. And those who are interested to join us can also join us with a small payment, which will be described in the link box. And absolutely, it is not necessary. You can watch it free online. There is no issue. But if you want further discussion on this, you can definitely think of joining. But that's not mandatory anyway. So maybe I think all of you would have at least attended 1 or 2 classes, or maybe a week's class in your colleges. And maybe they might have begun all the text elsewhere. And unlike the schools, they begin the portion from, maybe they start from module 3 initially. They need not go in chronological order as in schools. We have the first lesson and then second lesson coming up. So they will start somewhere, wherever it is possible. And also you don't have, I mean, majority of colleges, you don't have the same teacher teaching the entire book or maybe the syllabus. So you have multiple teachers teaching the same text. So naturally they begin not at in a chronological order, but at random. So we also plan to begin this module first, Ted Hughes, and this particular session, you are going to have a poetry to begin with. And naturally, you have this particular poem prescribed, Ted Hughes, his poem, Thought Fox. So what I have in mind is that maybe you are familiar with reading poems. Maybe you are quite familiar with understanding or evaluating or maybe getting ideas of a poem. But in this context, or because you are UG students, you are degree students, you need to understand the poem. That is one thing. But writing examination is equally important. So we, in our website or in our system of learning or teaching, we would give equal focus on explaining the poem as well as taking it for the examination. Because you have to understand that you need to write and score. Your academic index, academic score, or maybe what you call marks, are directly proportional to your academic excellence. So even if you're very good, exceptional in the classroom, if you don't have the marks on your mark list or maybe grade card, you will be relegated. Maybe you understand that your entry to the college is largely determined by the marks. So marks are very important, and we give equal importance to teaching as well as writing. So I have a set of questions for you at the end. So what my plan is that you should have some basic understanding or fundamental about this particular writer, this particular poem, and you have to have a detailed analysis. You have to understand a very detailed analysis of this particular poem, which you'll be doing that, and a kind of an explanation. And this particular channel and this particular poem will be available throughout this year for you to watch it again and again if you feel like, or just watch it and then try to answer the questions. I've only given you the questions and I'll tell you how to answer that. So once again, wish you all a happy listening as well as happy Vidyarambha. We just wanted to start today because that is a day auspicious for certain people who think this is the right day to have the education started. So maybe you are not starting education, but you are restarting education. So all the best for your restart, and hopefully I wish all of you to do well in the examination. I think I'm joined by people from all districts like Wayanad, Kozhikode, Malappuram, Palakkad, and Thrissur, where our university is spread out. And also I have few students from Thrissur district as well, right? So thank you everybody for joining. We will begin the class. So Ted Hughes' poem, Thought Fox. That is our first concern today. Okay. So this is a poem. You have the poem. I'll just read out the poem for you to understand what it is. Just listen my voice and then we'll explain it further. I imagine this midnight moment's forest. Something else is alive beside the clock's loneliness and this blank page where my fingers move. Through the window, I see no star. Something more near, through deeper within darkness is entering the loneliness. Cold, delicately as the dark snow. A fox's nose touches twig leaf, two eyes serve a moment, that now and again, now and now and now. Sets neat prints into the snow between trees, and verily a living shadow lacks by stump in the hollow of a body that is bold to come across clearings, and I, a widening, deepening greenness, brilliantly, concentratedly, coming about its own business, till, with a sudden, sharp, hot stink of fox, it enters the dark hole of the head. The window is starless still, the clock ticks, and the page is printed. Okay, that is the poem all about. I just wanted to have you the feeling of a poem, that's all. It's set into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stanzas of almost 4 lines each. You call it a quatrain, 4 lines each. And you don't have a rhyme scheme in the poem. Rhyme scheme, you understand that you look at the word, last word and the last sound. And if there is identical, you call it a rhyme scheme. So this poem does not have keep a exact rhyme scheme everywhere. Though second stanza may have the same ending, R, R sound ending and S sound ending, but it is not followed. So it does not have a rhyme scheme proper. So when you look at this particular poem, you understand that this is all about a fox. And we'll have to reflect on the title that I'll be doing after the class. I mean, once I explain everything. So it begins with, I imagine. So the first part of the poem is a kind of an imagination. And towards the end, you find that the poem is printed, which is not imagination, but it is in reality. So poem starts with a kind of dream-like situation, but ends with a realistic kind of a situation. We'll look at the lines. So to have an introduction, he was born in 1930 in Yorkshire and attended the grammar school where he wrote poems at the age of 15. So he was a talented person, Ted Hughes, and started writing poetry at a very early age of 15, maybe when he was at school. Before beginning English studies at Cambridge University, where he graduated, he spent much of his national service time as reading and rereading all the Shakespeare texts. Right? There was in England, even that practice is still there. You have reading session, just like what you call podcast. Now you often come across in websites that you have a entire novel being read out. Right? This particular reading a poem or reading a play, reading a novel is very popular in England. Even now it is popular. Now it is done as a podcast. So he, according to certain reports, he could do it by heart because he could by heart an entire Shakespearean play maybe, or maybe the part of Shakespearean play, and he could recite it without. So that means he has a versatile personality who could actually by heart things and reproduce. Maybe he would, I think, would do much better in Calicut University examination if he is given a chance. At Cambridge, he spent most of his time reading folklore and Yeats's poems. Yeats was a very popular writer in those days, I mean, especially in the first half of 20th century, and switched to English and archaeology from anthropology in the third year, right? So there, in England and America, you can switch your main subjects. If you have taken botany in the first year, you can change to English or maybe mathematics or maybe even commerce. That is possible there. So he changed to English from archaeology and anthropology. That was the topic he selected initially. The first collection of poems, Hawk in the Rain, appeared in 1954, the year he graduated from Cambridge. So his graduation at the age of 20, along with, at the age of 24 rather, 24, and along with the publication of the poem happened together. Just like our Malayalam writer, Changambura. When Changambura was a student of graduation, degree student in Maharaja's College, one of his poems was prescribed. So he was fortunate enough to read and write and maybe take the examination for a poem he himself has written, similar. And this is Sylvia Plath, his wife. She was also a well-known writer. And I would just say that I'll just read out. Yeah. In February 26, so the launch of a literary magazine, Send Bottle of Review, and which Hughes was one of the 6 co-producers. He started a journal of poetry and met Sylvia Plath in the same year, and they quoted sometime and married after 4 months. The first book of poems, Hawk in the Rain, you have to note this particular poem. You might get a question because this particular poem is taken from this collection. Published in 1957 to immediate acclaim. He immediately was recognized as one of the talented writers. Over next 41 years, he survived 41 years further, and he has composed about 90 books and numerous, almost all awards and fellowships he won, number of them. In 84, he was appointed poet laureate. Just like what do you have in our country, like Asthana Kavi. A laureate is a person who is supposed to be appointed as something like a chief minister in the realm of literature. So he was the poet laureate. So that is one of the highest honor a poet can think of in UK. So he was poet laureate, appointed as poet laureate. Now, Hughes's earlier poetic work is rooted in nature. This point you can maybe take a screenshot. And in particular, innocent savagery of animals. So he was preoccupied with, concerned with animal poems. I'll be explaining this a little further at the end of the poem. An interest that he developed from a very early age. See, people, especially poets, develop different kinds of analogy. Somebody would write on nature like Wordsworth. Somebody would write on symbolic kind of activity like AIDS. Or somebody like Ted Hughes would write on animals. Somebody would write on maybe birds. And maybe somebody would like D.H. Lawrence would write on mosquitoes or even certain insects like that. So he wrote frequently of the mixture of beauty and violence. So this is his peculiarity. He mixed beauty and violence. Very often beauty and violence do not go together. Violence is almost the opposite of beauty. But you may at times come across something like what AIDS called terrible beauty. So he was talking about the terrible beauty and violence in the natural world. And unlike Thought Fox, there are other poems like Jaguar, or maybe a poem like Hawk Roasting, where he, I think, deals more with violence. But this particular poem, you don't have violence being displayed in that particular fashion. Now, animals serve as a metaphor for him, which we'll have to explain further in view of life. Animals live out a struggle for the survival of the fittest. And in animal world, the main rule is survival of the fittest. Whoever is fit would outburst or maybe, outreach the other animals. The humans strive for ascendancy and success. So survival of the fittest was the new norm as far as animal world is concerned. And in human world, it is the power, intelligence, all that matters. So in our world, I think the person who is fit enough or maybe who has a brilliant physique or maybe a best physique may not be the ruler. The ruler has to have intelligence. But in the animal world, sheer physical strength is what is needed. So you have poems like Hawk Roasting, Jaguar, etc., where this violence or survival of the fittest concept is done. The Thought Box, on the other hand, is one of the very popular, most popular poems. You find this poem figure in almost all the anthologies and all the university syllabus. It is also one of the most celebrated poetic accounts of the act of writing poetry. That is the theme of the poem. It is all about writing poetry, which I'll be explaining further, or rather more accurately, trying to write poetry with the arrival of inspiration. So how you get inspired and write a poem. That is how it has been done. Okay, we'll move to the next slide. Animal poems are not altogether alien in English literature. So you don't be under the impression that Hughes was the first writer to write animal poems. No. Non-human world, animal, fowls, and insects, everything is handled by a number of other writers. William Blake, for example, who wrote poems like Tiger, Lamb, etc. D.H. Lawrence, who wrote about mosquito, snake. So there are a number of writers who have attempted this kind of poetry earlier. But of course, there is a drastic difference between what they wrote and what Hughes is writing. What makes Hughes unique is integration of human and animal world. Of course, Blake, even Lawrence did that, but in a different way, which I'll be coming to at the end of the poem again. Thought Fox explores and analyzes writers' struggle for inspiration. So you all agree that writers write with a inspiration. I mean, it is the concept is challenged in the 20th century, 21st century, or even towards the end of 20th century. But still, we believe that poets get inspired before they write, which is depicted in the poem by the fox. The fox in the poem is a metaphor for imagination or inspiration. In summary, the speaker of the poem sits and tries to write a poem. The sound of ticking clock and blank page from his taunting him. So there is nothing that inspires him. We will be coming to these lines later. He casts around for inspiration, but rejects the typical poetic trope of stars. I see no star, instead of sensing arrival of fox into his loneliness. So this is an explanation of the poem, introductory kind of an explanation, which I'll be explaining further in the poem proper. So this is your poem coming up. Yeah, I imagine this midnight moment's forest, something else is alive beside the clock's loneliness and this blank page where my fingers move. So the keywords, imagine, midnight, forest, clock, loneliness, blank page. So these keywords will tell you what exactly is the meaning of the poem, right? So you find a very subjective opening. You have the I starting with the poem. I imagine. So it is, as he says, it's a kind of an imagination. So he imagined to be a midnight moment's forest. This midnight moment's forest would correspond to his mind, or maybe the subconscious, right? Where he has number of memories stored. So poets very often write with this subconscious memory, or maybe what you call imagination, or from the heart, or maybe from their intelligence. So this midnight moment's forest also would throw light into the unknown. So he doesn't know what is there. This forest is maybe corresponding to his mind, where he doesn't have an idea what it is. And even you don't have access to your mind, absolutely. So you only have an access to your conscious mind. So Freudian theories would, at some point of time, work in this particular session or in this particular point. So midnight's moment forest is the unconscious mind of the writer, which were the imagination is like a torch that is being lit there, right? You just have absolute darkness, and then you have the midnight moments forest coming up, where he imagines certain things. So actually the process of writing poetry is very, very complex. Even the writer doesn't know what exactly he's going to write. I mean, this is true with all of us. When you start writing something, you don't know what you're going to write next. It comes only when you actually write. So poetry also is like that. So you don't know how this is going to be written. So midnight moments forest is imagined, and the speaker of the poem is conscious that something is alive, but it's not very clear. It is very vague. So he is aware that something is alive, but not sure what it is exactly. And there are two things which he has around him. One, clock's loneliness. The clock is ticking. The time is midnight, so there will be silence everywhere, except the ticking of the clock. This blank page in front of him, where his fingers move, right? His fingers are moving instead of his pen or a pencil. So he is not able to do anything. He just sits, reflects, and listens to the ticking of the clock, and the blank page is in front of him. This is the opening of the poem. It's a midnight forest. Something else is alive. Else meaning is not very sure what it is. Clock is in front, which is ticking. That is, moment of time is suggested. Waiting for the beginning. So he is waiting for something to happen. Or maybe he is waiting for this to come to an end. Okay. Yeah. Somebody has joined. Can you mute? Somebody joined from Samsung. Prem. Yeah, can you mute? Yes. Please mute yourself. Yeah, please.
So 1 second, please.
Yeah, can you mute?
Yes, it's done.
Yeah, thank you. So this is the second stanza coming up. Through the window, I see no star. Through the window, I see no star. That is the second activity. The clock was ticking. Through the window, I see no star. Something more near, deeper within darkness is entering the loneliness. So the keywords are star, near, deeper, darkness, and loneliness. We'll explain that. So after the clock and the blank page, there is also another entity. That is a window that is open. And the window that is open, he can see the sky. And I see no star. Meaning, this is also a statement on that he is not really inspired by the natural objects that inspired greatly on romantics, that inspired greatly on all other writers. So this natural objects no more inspire him, like star or sky or something, a flower or a leaf or a tree, whatever. So to the window, I see no star. No stars are visible. There is also darkness and there is no inspiration from that side. Something more near. Actually, something else was alive in the last paragraph or stanza. Now something is more near. So he feels that something is coming towards him. Though deeper within darkness. It's not very clear because it is pitch darkness. You don't see. It is almost dark. But you feel that something else is coming towards you. You have a kind of a feeling. Maybe it's not visible properly. He's entering the loneliness. This loneliness is that of the midnight moments forest. You connect this with the first line, right? So midnight moments forest, something else is alive. And this something else is more near now, deeper within darkness, so not very visible either. It is entering the loneliness of my head, where it is blank. The page is blank, my mind is blank. But something is trying to enter into that. So first point I said, natural objects no more inspire, just like romantics or other writers. Something is near, deeper within darkness, slowly entering the loneliness. So the speaker is aware of something coming near, but not yet clear, palpable. He cannot touch and feel. Yet it is very concrete and productive. He knows that this is going to be very productive, but it has not taken shape yet. Cold, it is not animating. It is very cold because you understand that the climatic condition is cold and you have snow around. Delicately as the dark snow. Cold is compared to very delicate as snow. And you understand that the difference between normally you have a fall of during the winter in England, you have ice fall, right? And there'll be snowfall as well. So when you actually look at the snow, when the temperature further falls, you have this kind of a misty like snow, where actually you can just take it in your hands. So it is it'll be like very crisp, right? Not very hard. Ice will be very hard. So even if you have ice around, you are not able to move. It is slippery as well as very hard also. But when you have snowfall, snow is so misty like, or maybe you can just take it in your hands, right? So you might have watched this in films. That is actually snow. So when you walk on the snow, you set neat prints. Your leg, of course, your leg goes down, right? Footsteps വെക്കുമ്പോൾ അതിങ്ങനെ കുഴിഞ്ഞു പോകും. ഒരു കുഴിയായിട്ടാണ് സ്റ്റെപ്പ് ഉണ്ടാവുക. ഐസിന്റെ മുകളിൽ നടക്കുമ്പോഴില്ല, ഐസിന്റെ മുകളിൽ നടക്കുമ്പോൾ ഒന്നും സംഭവിക്കില്ല, അത് ഹാർഡായിട്ട് തന്നെ നടക്കും. സ്നോ അപ്പൊ അത് അതിന്റെ മുകളിൽ കാല് വെച്ചാൽ അത് താഴേക്ക് പോകും. So cold delicately as the dark snow, the fox's nose. So remember, what comes alive initially is the nose. Well, you just imagine a fox standing with his nose up. So what the writer sees first is a nose. And look at the way it is described. A fox's nose touches twig leaf. See, if he had inserted a word and in between, twig and leaf, then you understand that it touches twig first, then leaf. So when you say twig leaf, it does in very quick succession. It happens in very quick succession, right? So you don't have time to describe what is first and what is second. So it does in a very drastic. So you understand that the arrival of fox is very fast, right? So initially it was something alive, then it was something more near, then suddenly you see the nose. And that nose comes up in very quick succession. You don't have time to describe what is first and what is second. Two eyes. Immediately after the nose, there is two eyes. Serve for a moment, just for one moment you see. So whenever in darkness you see an animal, what you exactly see is the green eyes of two green eyes of that. So the body you may not be able to see in darkness. But two eyes serve for a moment. And now and again, now and now and now. So he is not able to explain in quick succession. And the moment he begins to see the nose, it then becomes two eyes, then a body, then it comes very fast. Just like you have an example, I can give an example, like in a football match, the commentator may not be, if there is so many passes in between before you hit a goal, the commentator may not be able to explain or describe each and every moment because it happens in very quick succession. So he might come to say something like that. Angane, angane, angane എന്ന് പറയും. അപ്പോൾ you already know. അപ്പോൾ ഈ പാസ് ഒന്നും പറയാനുള്ള സമയം ഉണ്ടാവില്ല. Because it happens in very quick succession. So the word repeated now and now and now. You understand that it comes alive and alive and alive from out of the darkness, from out of the forest, right? So keywords, snow, foxes, nose, two eyes, now, etc. And you just read what I've been explaining. Foxes, nose, twitch, leaf in quick succession, and two eyes for a moment, and repetition of the word now, indicating greater immediacy. Immediate, it comes immediate, again and again and again, right? Okay. Now, across clearings, an eye. These two eyes suddenly becomes one eye. Across clearings. I mean, felling maybe, or maybe in between trees, a widening, deepening greenness. A widening, deepening greenness. A greenness which is into one eye, which is wide and deep, meaning it has great depth. The color of the eye, or the eye has great depth, great widening. Meaning you just understand that this is just an ordinary fox. Now, there is a very subtle attempt on the part of the writer to make this fox something extraordinary, something so unreal. Not the kind of a fox that you and I meet occasionally or in a forest. This is a typical fox, so unreal, so out of the blue. So it has certain characteristic features different from that of an ordinary fox. So instead of two eyes, so up to this point, up to this line, fox was quite ordinary. Now you have a fox which is different, with one eye, and that too a deepening, widening greenness, brilliant and concentrated, coming about its own business. This is something very important. It is coming not after invitation. It is not that fox is invited or invoked. Fox comes about its own business, meaning imagination does not come when you seek. It has to happen. So fox comes about its own business, not invited. There is no fixing up an agenda or a meeting time. Not that I'll make an appointment with you at 12 o'clock in the night. No, it just happens like that. So you have an eye, brilliant and concentrated, coming about its own business, not invited. So it comes only when he or it feels, not when you seek to meet this particular fox. Okay, coming about its own business. Till that it has come so live, till with a sudden hot stink of fox. Until then, fox was quite imaginary, visual, right? So this imaginary visual fox suddenly becomes so real when you get the stink of it, the smell of it. So another imagery used where it has become so real. So when you need to get a stink of somebody's, the smell of somebody, it has to be so near. So the fox now becomes too close and enters. See, it doesn't come and go like that. It enters the dark hole of the head. Here, I think you need to elaborate further and maybe come to the conclusion that it is a fox that is not something ordinary that you see here and there. It's a kind of a fox, a imaginary fox maybe, or maybe a fox in virtual reality that enters the dark hole of the head. It suddenly goes to the head, which was actually lonely, which was actually not productive, which was actually uninspired, which was just a midnight moment's forest. So the head, the dark hole, you don't know which hole it has filled. It just entered, maybe through your nose or through your mouth or wherever, we don't know, because you have the stink of fox, then suddenly fox entering your head, right? The doors are not very clear. So it enters the dark hole of the head. And window starless, no change for the window. Window is starless still. Clock is ticking as usual. There is no change. But the only change is that page is printed. So this printing of the page or writing of the poem does not have a bearing on the window or the clock. It only has a bearing on the activity of the head. And this activity of the head is instilled by or inspired by the fox that entered the dark hole of the head. The moment the fox enters the dark hole of the head, the page gets printed, right? So this is the poem in explanation. So I just have a beautiful picture taken from Google where the page gets printed. So you, in this picture, you find that there is a three-dimensional figure of the fox. Fox was earlier imaginary, then it was real, then it was too real, three-dimensional, because the fox had suddenly become so visible, so clear. And you can look at the questions, and these question answers will be explained in our classroom, right? Where I think Dr. Premanand will explain. I'll just wait for a minute for you to read. So these are the kind of questions, or maybe examples of questions that might come for the examination. And there are also other questions possible. I mean, I'm just providing a structure. You can just quickly go through, or maybe take a screenshot of this. And if you find any question difficult, you can if you need assistance in writing, you can definitely join our program, and maybe Dr. Premanand will explain that. And then where you have a classroom, Google Classroom, where we'll be explaining certain things further, especially assist you in writing. And these are the paragraph questions possible, and also essay questions. So you expect 3 different formats of questions from this poem, right? All 3 kinds: short question, paragraph, and essay. You can take a screenshot definitely. And that takes us to the end of the show. Thank you. We'll be back with more programs. And over to you, Dr. Premanand.
Thank you, Dr. Prasanth. It is a brilliant presentation. As Dr. Prasanth said, this whole concept of Litmosphere live classes would be to enable you to know and understand the lesson much better. Now, your teachers are already must have taught you, and of course, they would definitely be giving you material regarding all this. But then we would like to go further. This you should treat it as a second revision. We will be sourcing experts from different places in Calicut University, and we will be trying to give you all the lessons in what we call a second. This is basically a revision for you. And those who would like to join can join. I've put the number in the chat. You can check with them. You can just ask for the Litmosphere e-resource guide. The person will guide you onto whatever information is required for that. And in the Google Classroom, what we will be doing is we will be having live discussions. We will be having questions, question answers, then examination-based tips, and so on and so forth, and other additional material that you would like. So it will be a general e-resource for everyone. So please do look into that number, 8089370344, and call the person. I'm sure you'll benefit a lot. So thank you once again, Dr. Prasanth, and we will be stopping this particular live portion, and we will be again on with the next lesson. The next lesson for Litmosphere Live is The Sleeping Fool by Suniti Namjoshi. It's scheduled at 9 o'clock. So thank you once again for joining.
Thank you.
The meeting is hereby ended.
Okay.